I believe that whether we're looking at an eating disorder, which is a mental health issue, or whether you're looking at biological reasons, some of which can be endocrine related, we make judgments about people based on their appearance. And even really smart people, even educated people, also do the same things. My daughter was in a psychiatric facility because she tried to kill herself because of feeling like her body was not good enough. Obviously tried to lose weight. It was a terrible, terrible battle for the whole family. And families in general, families don't talk about it because they feel judged. They feel like they've done something wrong, terrible. A great number of girls start having anorexia, for example, which is the most deadly there's a huge book about this thick, that's the diagnostic manual, that's our Bible, and in my profession, of people that have, I'll call them mental health issues. But anorexia is the number one that will cause the most deaths. When I was in high school, I went to a Catholic girls' high school at the time, this was many years ago, obviously. There was a girl who joined us as a junior. Now, we were fairly tight-knit, and she came in as a transfer student. Well, that already put her kind of out of the group, right? But this girl was so thin. We didn't have a word called anorexia at the time. And every day after school, we would stop by Thrifty's drugstore, and we would get ice cream, right? And she would always take the little cup and she would put it right down next to her seat. And I would say, aren't you hungry? And every day she would say, oh, I'll eat it later, I'll save it for later. Now, I really didn't think much more about it. The fact that I remember it says that I guess at least I did notice it. Behind her back, I will say that many of the girls used to make fun of her. We had 6 months after our high school graduation, I got a message from one of my fellow graduates who said, oh, did you know that Loretta went to San Francisco? Her parents took her to San Francisco to some hospital. Everybody went, whoa, really? Oh, okay, you know. And we went on about our business. I found out a year after high school graduation that Loretta died. And she died of anorexia, and it was the first time I ever heard that term. There are still people that are out there struggling, whether it be from eating disorders, depression, which I think is very much a part of all of that. Sometimes people turn to food and overeat, binge eating disorder. We turn to food. We turn to a lot of things because we have feelings inside. And sometimes you cut, sometimes you use drugs. We're trying to heal pain. Some colleagues of mine have a free support group for eating disorders. You don't have to sign up or anything. It's Wednesday nights. I've got a couple flyers here, and it's here in Camarillo.
Just mentioning what Linda Rio said about her story, I think if any of us, because I mean most of us, the majority of us are in high school, it's a good story to keep in your head for the future. You know, if you see a friend or even a classmate, someone that, looks like they're having a hard time in school, or you see someone picking on them, or, if they're storing food and saving it for later, just be a friend to them and ask like, hey, want to hang out with me sometime? Because even a small gesture of a smile or a compliment or, asking to hang out, even if you might not want to hang out with them, that could change their day.
So how many plastic surgery procedures are done? 15.6 million cosmetic procedures were performed in 2014, and that's a 3% increase since the year before. That's compared to 5.8 million reconstructive procedures in 2014, which is an increase of 1%. Now, the numbers aren't as bad as that sounds. There are cosmetically minimally invasive procedures that they're counting in there. Those aren't really surgeries. Those are things like Botox injections, fillers, chemical peels, laser hair removal, microdermabrasion, they've counted those, and those are definitely a lot more than everything else. There's 13.9 million of those. But of the surgical ones, 1.7 million, the most common ones were breast augmentation, nose shaping, liposuction, eyelid surgery, and facelift. I just put that for a little reference. But it's interesting because men also get plastic surgery. Somebody was surprised to hear this earlier, so I put this in the slide. I went and found the procedure statistics, and 8% of the procedures done overall are actually done on men, and that's an increase of 1% from 2013. The surgical procedures is interesting. Men actually have 13% of that, so that's actually more than they do more surgical than they do non-surgical. And during the recession, anecdotally, men came in because they felt like they too were having social pressures to look younger so they could be more competitive in the workplace because they were being displaced by younger people. I mean, women had that too, but that's not surprising to us. We all knew about that, but men were also starting to feel that, and so they were coming in for Botox and other things. And since we're talking about, so for them, the most common thing is Botox, hair removal, microdermabrasion, chemical peels, and fillers. You know what laser hair removal is, right? So you understand why men would get that on their backs and stuff. And microdermabrasion is just, it's honestly just a facial. I don't know if you'd really count that. You can really get that with just a really good buff puff. You really don't need to go get microdermabrasion. You didn't hear that from me, but it's true. And chemical peels, you usually can honestly get that with good products if you just use them long enough. So these are really sort of relatively minor other than the Botox and filler. For men though, their most common procedures are nose jobs and eyelids, as opposed to women who, like I said earlier, was breast and liposuction. Also, men have a lot of breast reduction, 26,000. What's interesting is, I'll get to that in the teenage years, we'll talk about that, and then liposuction and facelift. So slightly different composition for the men. But in teens, and I was surprised to find this, age 13 to 19, there were actually 63,000 procedures done in 2014 on teenagers from 13 to 19. And the most common thing was actually rhinoplasties, which is nose jobs. And you know, you've heard the stories where people get something at 16 as their birthday present. But the next thing is gynecomastia. Gynecomastia is when boys have breasts and they want to get them reduced. But what people don't tell the boys is that it's a really high percentage of boys who are going through puberty that do have breasts, and that's normal. And in fact, if you come too early, your pediatrician, and if you even get to us, will tell you to wait till you're done with puberty, because a lot of times those will go away. But when nobody tells the guys that, so they're all like, oh my God, I have breasts, what does that mean? And they really have a complex about it, and they usually come in and they're being made fun of, and yet like 80% of boys go through it. So augmentation is next for girls, and ear otoplasties, we're pinning back the ears, and then breast reductions. The ones that I have actually done on the teenagers have mostly been like people who have had one breast a lot larger than the other, and they're going to gym, and it's really much more of less of a cosmetic thing than just trying to go back to feeling more normal. But as far as minimally invasive, microdermabrasion, we already talked about that, laser, Botox, and chemical peels, which I was a little bit surprised about. I'm not sure why you would do Botox in somebody as a teenager, but that's where it is. The guidelines out there have said that you shouldn't do plastic surgery on a teenager unless, number one, it's self-initiated, something that they want, not their mom or somebody else wants, that they have really realistic expectations of why they're getting this. And the last thing is that they're emotionally and physically mature. So that makes sense, right? Because if you want a breast something, your body's not even done developing, you shouldn't be getting any breast anything until you see what you're actually gonna end up being. And then emotional maturity. I mean, if you think that this is gonna suddenly get you a whole bunch of friends or you're gonna be popular, it's not gonna do that. It's not gonna change how you feel inside. And so those things I think are really important. That's true for adults too, and we'll talk about that.